Morning.
Well, you couldn't escape it. You thought maybe we had an international guest and I would not dance like I do for my intro and I'd be responsible and adult-like, but I wasn't.
Professional and all that. Yeah, I thought so too. But well.
That Max, I just love that intro music. So I'm usually dancing as we come in, and Tom and I have been friends most of our lives, so he gets a little had enough of that, all of that. So Max, how are you?
I'm fine. Looking forward to this talk.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's great to have you visiting with us today from Germany. We're going to dive into getting to know Max Meister, who's joining us today in just a moment. Tom, you're doing all right this morning?
Doing okay. Max is about what, 6 o'clock there?
Yeah, 6 p.m.
All right. It's happy hour there.
Happy hour. That's right. That's right. And I saw him only with a glass of water.
Okay. So, we think it was water.
Yeah, that's right. Very, very good. Very good. So let's kind of dive in and get our day started. I'm Kevin Brown. I'm here with my lifelong friend and business partner and co-founder of LeadSmart Technologies, Tom Burton. We're very appreciative and fortunate today. We've got Max Meister with us, who's with Ludwig Meister, a large distributor based in Bavaria in southern Germany. And we're going to dive in and talk about Max and Max's business and the technology that he works with and Max's podcast. And we're going to learn a lot about Max and European Union business and so forth today. But before we do that, we always cover a little bit of housekeeping before we get rolling. So again, welcome to Around the Horn in Wholesale Distribution and Manufacturing. We come to you every Friday morning. We do that unless someone is on vacation or stuck on an airplane, which happens a couple of times a year. And what we do is we pull together the news of the week. We look at things in the economy and supply chain and manufacturing and distribution, sales and marketing, IT, cybersecurity, AI, mergers and acquisitions. And we try and pull all that together. We put it into a newsletter we publish every Friday morning. It goes out to about 10,000 people. It's called, again, Around the Horn in Wholesale Distribution and Manufacturing. If you don't get that newsletter and you would like to, there's two simple ways. One, you can send us an email at hello@leadsmarttech.com. Just simple hello@leadsmarttech.com. We'll get you added to that list. Second is you can go to the website for our podcast, which is www.aroundthehornpod.com, and we will get you added in as well to that. If you're listening on the podcast or the recorded version of the show, what you won't see is we'll have up occasionally today that newsletter. But we go through that newsletter with our guests, kind of break down what's going on with all of that, and talk about the news of the week and how that impacts distribution and manufacturing. Before we jump in, we couldn't have done today's show, or we're at 95 today. Is that right, Tom?
I believe so.
We're 5 weeks from our 100th show. The excitement is gathering about that. That's not something that too many podcasts are able to achieve. And going to have a little party with that. So more to come on that shortly. Working with John Taylor, our producer and editor, on all of that right now. But if you like what you hear as you join us, subscribe to the newsletter. But the best thing you can do to help your peers in the industry that might get some value, as well as us, is if you're listening on LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button. You'll get updates each week. It helps us bring this show to you. If you're listening on podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever the platform is you use, leave a review, hit the thumbs up button. That helps get this out to more people as we go. So, Tom, that's about it. Anything to add in our housekeeping? I tried to do a little quicker today.
No, that was good. That was well done. So, if you're out there, let us know you're there. And hopefully we're getting comments today. Last week seemed to be a bit better.
Yeah.
And welcome Max to Happy Hour. I think that's what we'll just call the show, Happy Hour.
It's called a happy. When we have international guests, we'll call it Happy Hour. So, Max, we've been connected on LinkedIn for quite a while. We've had a number of nice discussions there. You humor me with my, with my mother being from Bavaria, not far from where you live, that I say I know 7 German words. It's just a different 7 words every day. And sometimes they come together and pour grammar into a sentence that somebody that speaks German can understand. So you've humored me with a few of those in our conversation, but we finally got you to join us on the show. Could you just maybe take a little time? You're unique when it comes to CEOs in the distribution world. And when I say unique, that's my perspective, because you're involved in technology. You have a podcast and you're the co-CEO of a large distribution company. So to me, that's quite intriguing. I think most of our guests listening will find that as well. maybe give us a little background where, your background, the company background, and things you're working on.
Yeah, thank you. So I run the company together with my sister. Ludwig Meister is a power transmission fluidics and tools distributor with roughly 130 million euros revenue. And I think it's very important to do some stuff different. And that is why I, for example, make a podcast. It's called Max and the Supply Chain Heroes now for, I think, 5 years.
Wow.
Because if you want to get the best talent and if you want to get good people, then you have to attract them. And that's the main reason why I do all these extra stuff. So until today, no customer called me and said, I listened to your podcast. It's the best one. I want to buy everything from you. So
but you probably meet people that it may surprise you that listen to the podcast, right?
Yes, on fairs, trade shows, and some conferences, the people ask me or tell me that they like the show. So the company is quite old. It was founded before the Second World War, and I would say we are number 5-ish in Germany. The last 5 years, we grew quite well. So since 2018, we grew 30%. And we did this all organically, and this is maybe something we can talk about later.
Yeah.
I'm also very interested in digitalization. You called it tech. I think it's very important because we build all our software by ourselves. We have we bought an ERP, but all the logistics software, web shop, purchasing, CRM, that's everything homemade by our team. And today, this is one of our biggest differentiating factors, I would say, because we really add value for our customers. And the last one is I also have a company together with my sister where we invest in startups in the supply chain area, meaning purchasing, logistics, and stuff like this. And I'm over 40 years old. A father of 3, and I always say I'm in good mood since 1982, and my slogan is it's all about sharing. So I would be happy to connect on LinkedIn because I think you can learn every day.
You do a great job with the posts that you do on LinkedIn. I appreciate that. Max, does Ludwig Meister cover all of Germany or outside of Germany and other parts of the EU, or just specific geographies?
It's Germany and Austria. But our focus is, so we do outside sales or territory sales only in the southern part of Germany, but we try to acquire target customers in all over Germany. So this is what we are starting right now. But today, our focus is southern part of Germany and Austria.
Great.
And maybe a big difference to distributors in the US is that 70% of our revenue is with OE customers, meaning we sell bearings that go into the production, into the machine of our customers. So that is our focus.
Great. That's wonderful. So all of those John Deere plants and all of those types of customers that are popping up throughout Europe are probably using your products into their equipment that they're building. That's super. That's great news. So this gives us a nice kind of overview of your background and experience, which will be helpful. So Tom, any thoughts or questions of Max before
I have a lot of questions, but I'll kind of hold off as we get through here. But Max, you are very unique. It sounds like. Certainly, we work with a lot of distributors here. Do you find that by using like the podcast and some of the marketing things you're doing, you kind of find yourself rising above the noise a little bit, where you're differentiating yourself, in the brand and the relationship?
Actually, we have a platform. It's called Kununu. It's similar to Glassdoor in the US. And if you look at the ratings we get, it's getting better and better. And that's the same with ratings on Google and stuff like this. So I really think that this pays off now, but it took very long. I started really 5 or 4 years ago with a podcast, 5 years ago. And it took quite some time, but I think it's important to do stuff in a different way that is some kind of unique, because if not, then it's difficult to get out of the noise.
Well, it's there. I'd love to hear that, because there's got to be the differentiator, right? Because everybody can sell a pair of pliers or a bearing, or right. It's what you do and the support that you provide and how you help beyond that, right? That helps. We use the term tied to our software as well regularly, is the client success side of things, is how do we understand our customer through customer intelligence to make sure they're successful being partners with us. So this is good. I'm looking forward to today. Tom, you ready to dive in the news? It looks like, because you brought it up, and I'm actually quite shocked, my friend, that you waited this long, because this is I think where you get to gloat a little bit this morning.
I'm not ready to gloat at all. In fact, I'm actually nervous when I see this kind of stuff.
Good, glad to hear it.
Right. But
let's fill Max in real quick on this. So Max, I know Germany's gone through some recessionary times last year, and I think things getting a little bit better now. We have this whole crazy high interest rates here in the U.S. So our Federal Reserve, they seem to be, kind of up and down with when they're going to do some interest cuts. So Max, I don't know if I shared this with you, but you may know this from listening to the show in the past. Tom and I have been friends for over 50 years. And so we don't pull any punches with each other. So we have a bet over a steak dinner. And that is that Tom thinks there will be one interest rate cut this year, and I believe two this week. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, well, this week they stated that they envisioned, the Federal Reserve stated that they envisioned just one rate cut this year. That all said, there were definitely people in the meeting, some of the governors or whatever in the meeting, that were advocating two. I don't like it that they're stating this. To me, I think it's actually going to hurt my bet a little bit. But anyway, I think it aligns with everything we've just seen, right? Is that, yeah, okay, there's inflation is maybe drifting down a little bit, but it's nowhere near and I agree, their arbitrary 2% target.
Yep.
And job growth is still really high. I mean, there's still a lot going on, right? So I think their point is, hey, we'd like to get a little bit more information. We'd like to see things cool down a bit more before we start committing to a bunch of rate cuts. But anyway, we'll see. I'm by no means taking this to the bank yet. No pun intended.
Very good. Glad to hear it, because I will tell you, there's a little laugh. What was this? That was Wednesday, I believe, right? And we had the news on here at the house, and lovely Mrs. Brown, Darlene, points at the news, and she goes, "They just said it's going to be one. Tom wins."
Okay.
And I said, "Oh,
all right. Well, if she says that, then we should just call it off and be done with it."
Well, she does have the power for things like that.
Yeah.
So no, it was pretty funny. I was like, he didn't say that, and she backs the news up on the DVR and says, "See, he just said one." Like, oh boy, I was waiting for the phone to ring, Tom. So, anyways, we'll see what comes of it all. But regardless, we Max, we have here, and I don't know how closely you follow it, but we've got all these, the statistics that the U.S. Federal Reserve watches, and they just keep kind of going up and down. And there's this like the water can't quite boil. It starts to boil, and we look like we're going to get to a place for rate cuts, and then jobless claims change, and so forth. So we've been watching it pretty closely. It's it's important when we come out of this environment. We had like free money, and now money's so expensive, and it has a lot of impact on distribution. As you know, right? Inventory levels and so forth. You pay an extra 1/4 percentage point on interest rates, and you have a few $1 million of inventory. It's a big issue.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. I think, but I think it will stay that way. So I think Tom is right, because I also don't think that the inflation is going down very, very hard. I think there will be maybe even a higher inflation next year. But that's my point of view. I don't know if you know the Bonnier brothers from ITR Economics.
Yes. Yep.
I follow them closely, and they said maybe everything that you buy today will be the cheapest possibility in future, and I think that's true. Yeah.
I heard Alan Bollier speak at the Industrial Supply Association event in Charlotte, North Carolina, and every time I've heard him speak, I leave with a knot in my stomach. So Tom, I think you've listened to a few of those recordings, but yeah, I mean, there is some, I don't want to say doom and gloom, but there is some big cautious caution, and they back it up with good statistics. So I'm interested to see. I think one of the things, Max, and I don't know how this works in Germany, but here we've got an issue with the elections coming up, right? And with the elections coming up right now, we've got look at that. We got a comment from Duncan in Canada. You must have met Duncan before, Duncan Stacy. He's a good friend of the show. Duncan's with us regularly. He's a pipe valve and fitting distributor in Canada and a friend of the show and a good man. But we have an election coming up, right? And then we have this economy that's kind of fluttering right now here. So we've got one candidate saying, well, you know what? It was great when I was president before, and you're letting this guy have these high rates. The other guy really wants the rates to come down, but our Federal Reserve that creates the monetary policy says we're not being influenced by the president. But that's where I think, Tom, to your point earlier, we may see that second cut. Is I think they're going to have to test the waters, like we said, last week we talked about, because there's pressure in lots of areas, and if they did one in September, say, and things stay the same, I bet they do another one. So, anyways, I am not prepared though after this week's statement to raise the stakes on the bet.
Okay.
So, how's that? So,
fair enough.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this next article about the World Bank. We kind of included some international discussion, but the World Bank talks about the bigger forecast of U.S. economy supporting global growth of 2.6% this year. Max, Germany's economy is it the third largest in the world?
Yes, I guess so. If you look at the population, I think it's even bigger. But in total, a third one.
Yeah, I think from a GDP standpoint, I believe that's the case. So it's funny, because of the size of California, where Tom and I live. I think we're the fifth largest economy in the world, and in the state that we're in. But Bavaria, where you are, really drives that for Germany, right?
Yes, I would say Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, so both of the areas in the south of Germany. But I don't know if this stays like that in the future, because we are heavily focused on automotive industry, and all the companies that are tier 1, tier 2, and machine production companies and stuff like this. And I don't know how this will, how the future of automotive industry in Germany is. That's point one. And point two, I also think that the infrastructure. So if you look at Bavaria, wind energy, for example, is quite low in comparison to North Germany. So I think it's also challenging times for the future. But for me, I always say I don't care. I don't care about stuff that I cannot change. So if we have to find customers somewhere else, then we will look for them, maybe in Hamburg.
Sure. No, and that makes sense, right? Or Strasbourg, or wherever, right? Across the river. But so I want to unpack that a little bit. Your comment that you made related to automotive, is that maybe tied to BMW, Audi, BMW having like some U.S. plants or plants in other parts of the world? Is that the impact that you're describing?
Or is it the EV? Or is it
so I think it's the EV, because the EV, for example, for my industry, they have less moving parts. So it's a much simpler car, I would say. So the construction is different. So we will get more competition from China with BYD, for example. And I think it's very difficult to. So at the moment, maybe except the salary, I do not want to be the boss of Mercedes or BMW, because I think it's very difficult, challenging times to find the right strategy into the future.
Very good. Tom, any other thoughts on that?
No. I just, the one point that they brought up here in the article, right, is that while the growth rate was 2.6%, that's remained sluggish compared to past standards.
Right.
So it's interesting, right? We're spending a lot, it appears. Costs are going up, it appears, but yet growth rate is not really growing at that pace, due to some of the things that they say here. So
well, and they talk about in this article, which is interesting, right? Which is an AP News article. They talk about something we hear about the U.S. economy all the time, is they talked about, it says globally, but especially in the US, the economies have proved unexpectedly resilient in the face of high interest rates. And that's, I guess it's just, if I didn't want to, think about borrowing or accessing some cash, and have a need for high interest rates, you sit back and you just say, well, okay, the economy is doing fine. Those interest rates are high. But when you start looking at that, and, Max, we had a time, and I don't know what mortgage rates are like in Germany, but, or other parts of the EU, but, we had a time where people were getting, 2%, 2.5%, mortgages on their homes. And that's very different than 6 or 7% right now. Now, we also had a time years ago in the US where people were, in fact, we had a guest, Eric Hopland, 2 weeks ago on the show. Eric is the CEO of the National Association of Wholesalers.
Yep.
And he talked about having a conversation with his father the previous weekend. And I think his father said that they bought their family home at 18%.
Yeah.
So, what are rates like in Germany and other parts of the EU?
Yeah, I would say higher than 5%. It depends on the length of the contract or length of how fast you have to pay.
Mhm.
But to be honest, we are, so you cannot see it here, but here's a big plan for a new logistic I want to build.
Okay.
And it is the biggest investment in our company history. And we will do it anyway, even though the interest rates are high, because I really think that the costs will grow so fast the next couple of years that I think it's a good investment. So I always say we are all in at the moment, even though the interest rates are high, because I think it will be very expensive in 2 years.
You think those rates will continue to climb?
The rates will stay maybe like this, maybe decline a little, but the prices for the products, for logistics, for steel, for everything, they will really increase. I'm quite sure.
So the return on investment is there, right? Yeah, you're going to pay a little bit more on interest, but the return you're going to get downstream from reduced pricing or not having to pay the prices that are there. Interesting. And maybe that's a lot of what's happening.
I also think, and that's maybe driving future growth, I think many companies really they had a good time during the time of price increases the last 2 years.
Yep.
So once they tasted this good spirit, they want to stay in that mood. And because for us also as a company, the price increases were very good the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's good. All right. Well, that's a valuable discussion about seeing the comparison there as well. Tom and I were talking just kind of on a personal note last week, and just saying, both tied to our business and then tied to some things personally as well. But sometimes you just have to look at those interest rates. I mean, and just say, you know what, we've just got to move ahead. And I tie it to gas prices, and I think our gas prices, you would probably laugh. Because I think our gas prices are $1 or $2 more per gallon than yours are per liter.
Yeah.
And so I was happy. I filled up my gas tank on Wednesday, and I paid $5.01. And I was happy that it was that low. But the reason I bring that up is sometimes we get wrapped up in the price versus the value. And so for me, I was thinking, a 5 cent per gallon change in gas prices, I'm not going to drive out of my way to do that, because my savings and a tank of gas is not worth my time to get to what I need to go do. So sometimes we just got to, whatever it is in life, say, I'm going to suck that up and I'm going to move on and go create some value in something else.
Yeah,
good.
Definitely.
All right, Tom, we're going to move into our manufacturing distribution segment, and
these are actually kind of both related, right? These two articles.
Absolutely. Yep.
So there's 2 articles here: boosting manufacturing profits, the impact of generative AI, and then the undeniable impact of AI on modern manufacturing. Max, I know you're a big AI fan and you're using AI in your business. Any immediate takes from these, and what's your thought?
So I have 2 thoughts. I think it's a huge chance for the industry, because if you, for example, want to reduce the stock level throughout the supply chain, you have to use stuff like AI. And we do machine learning, so we have an own machine learning algorithm that helps us to guess how long the lead times are for our 2.5 million SKUs.
Wow.
And even though you only get maybe 5% better results than with statistics, 5% of a 30 million stock level is quite interesting. So I think
that'll continue to improve? Do you think that'll keep getting better and better, or do you think that kind of caps out?
I think that it's getting better and better. That's point A. And point B is I think it will be more accessible even for smaller companies because you can do a lot of analytics also supported by AI, even though you don't have programmer techies and stuff like this. So we have to use it in a better way, not to try to lose some competitive advantage. So that's why I think it has positive impact, but it is also a threat because you will get other companies using it in a very creative way. That's my take on that. Yeah.
Do you see your competitors trying to do things like that though, as well as building those machine learning pieces and so forth? Like you're talking about inventory analysis and so forth.
So I think maybe all the companies use chatbots. So we also have a chatbot with our internal data that we can ask. So that's not very difficult. So, but for example, the machine learning algorithm that we made that takes into consideration the global supply chain pressure index, for example, that's external data combined with our data. So at the moment, I do not know any distributors from my segment that do something like this. So I don't think so.
So right now, it's a competitive advantage.
Yes, and it's a lot of fun, to be honest, because good results. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you using generative AI at all, or models?
Yes, but for example, we have a API to OpenAI, so we do some master data stuff to improve the master data. And for example, you have a long text. And you want to have all the figures and the size of the bearing and stuff like this, then we take this out of the long text and save it in our database. So we use it every day already, I would say, for a couple of months.
Well, I have more questions, but I'll wait as we go along because I know we have quite a few different conversations about AI today. Kevin did a good job of picking articles.
Well, thank you. Was that my compliment for the month?
It was.
Very good.
I figure I'm going to be having a steak from you, so I need to be complimenting you.
Max, before we jump ahead, is how many people in your company are using AI tools right now?
I would say maybe 20 people from our 300 people.
Okay.
And then I'm very sure that I have 20 people that use ChatGPT without my knowledge, and they put data in that they shouldn't do. That's maybe the guess at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe some corporate secrets are sneaking into the OpenAI learning model.
Yeah. But I hope they always write that Max is a great guy. So I can ask later on who's the greatest guy in power transmission distribution. Right. So that's my goal.
I'll go ask some questions about that later and get your name in there, and then it'll be coming from multiple continents. Very good. So, all right, Mr. Burton, let's kind of dive ahead then, huh?
Yep.
So e-commerce and marketing is our next segment. And, I threw this article in here about B2B marketers say improving data quality is a top priority. And, it just leads to everything, right? Across the business of the importance of data. And this was from martechmagazine.com and talking about, some surveying about the importance of clean data and in using data in their for their marketing operations. But it's so much more than marketing, right? That's the key. It's just across the board. And Tom, we have a webinar coming up with one of the large US buying groups next month about it's about smart CRM, but a big component of it is how to use the gold mine of data, right? And Tom, you talk about that so often. So maybe Tom, you can throw a couple comments about data in general, and then let's tie that into the marketing component from this article.
Yeah, well, I'll start off with the article, which I find
Yeah.
actually promising. Is basically they're saying in the article, B2B marketers say improving data quality is the top priority. 2/3
Yep.
of B2B and B2B2C marketers survey cited improving data quality among their top 3 priorities. That I don't believe would have been the case a year ago or even
Mhm.
6 months ago.
Right.
I don't think they would have put that as their priority. So what I'm pleased to see is that the respect that data is starting to get the respect that it deserves. And we've been talking about this for a while. Max, my world is of AI, and what I work with is more in the front office of distributors, right? Working with their sales and their marketing and their go to market and their business part of things. And I see an enormous amount of valuable data that is just being ignored, wasted, not taken advantage of. And so, and I think that we've been harping on this on the show for a year probably or
Mhm.
longer about the importance of data. But I think that companies are starting to realize, hey, I got to do something. I've got to actually take care of my data a bit more, and not just have everything on spreadsheets. Are you seeing that more? And you were talking about what you're doing on the back end, but are you also going to be investing on the front end? And what do you see happening there as well?
We will definitely invest in the front end. So we made an own CRM. So my take
He
on
did
the
that,
front.
Tom. He did that before he met us, or
That's fair. All right.
he'd
Okay.
be
I'm
using
sorry.
ours. Yeah.
But the biggest advantage, what I think in of our system, is that we really get a lot of traction to our salespeople. So we try to guess the right tasks for my salespeople so that they can add value for the customer. And I think AI can help, but without good processes to really use all the things you learn out of the system from the data and from the analytics, then it's a nice dashboard for the head of sales or for me bragging on conferences or stuff like
Yeah.
this. But I think this gets even more important if you use AI, because sometimes it will be difficult for the salespeople to understand why the system says, for example, you should look at this customer. He's churning and he doesn't know why. And I think there will be some cultural issues. So I think AI, big advantage. We will do a lot of it, but you need good change management. You need good educational programs to really get all the benefits that are possible.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more about the change management aspect of things for sure. One of the things that we're seeing, and Kevin, I'll try and keep this short, but there's some interesting comments that Max said. One of the things we're seeing is taking structured data from the CRM, structured data from your ERP or your CRM, combining that with the unstructured data of your processes, your business workflows, your best practices, putting those together and doing the analysis, but then returning the output based around the intelligence of the processes and the best practices. Because I think, and then the organization understands the context more of what is being provided on the other end. So I really do believe that those two pieces together, when we say data, I mean, there's a structured data and the stuff that's in your ERP or CRM, all of that stuff, that's super valuable. But if you combine that with all of your best practices and your knowledge and the things that you have and we're finding a lot of companies don't have it, right? The sales process and the marketing process is an art, it's not a science. And it's an art based around who it is and how long they've been there and all of that. And obviously some of that can be captured, but you want to make that more repeatable. So I really do believe that change management is huge with part of that, and having that incorporates that in there.
That's good.
All right.
I was just gonna kind of tie that a little bit back to Max's comment, right, about trying to prompt salespeople. And that's something that we do within our system with Max. Tom and his team built a tool, we call it Genius Feed, right? So within our CRM solution and customer intelligence platform, we connect ERP systems, marketing automation systems, e-commerce systems. That data comes in. The central repository for that is the CRM platform. And then we run the AI tools against that to say, hey, you know what? Here's how you spend your day, right?
Mhm.
This customer is not buying this, but they're buying that. You need to talk to this person because these quotes are closing and so forth. And that to me, and I think there was one of you mentioned earlier about that personal interaction with customers and customer intelligence, as well as that's the beauty for me of AI is we have this is a big broader discussion, not for this moment, but people talk so much about AI replacing jobs, and AI is not going to replace that belly to belly relationship, that ongoing discussion of people that we have interpersonally. But when we can use AI to say, here's the data that you need to make someone's job better. It's no different than if you think about it in medicine, right? If a doctor can use AI to help understand how to serve a patient better, the doctor-patient relationship doesn't change at all, right? But AI supported that value that came out of it.
I was just looking for a book. It's called The Machine from Justin Rolf Marsh.
Hmm.
And he writes about how outside sales people should be coordinated. And what he's using a nice term, and it's called meaningful conversations. And I think what is very important is that you use the data to create a meaningful conversation together with your partner, with your customer, with your supplier.
Right.
And if you can help with supplying information that are really making a difference, then it's a great help, and maybe will help in change management, because if the people are successful because they have this data, then this is a big advantage. One sentence to the idea of a CRM combining all the data sources. That's a big difference in my company, because we only have one Oracle database, and everything is in one system, from sales, purchasing, logistics, e-commerce, everything.
Yep.
Is
Very
that
good.
basically a big data warehouse you've created for everything, or is that just one database you're using?
It's one database.
Okay.
It's not a data warehouse. It's a database. We are. I always say we are the grumpy Germans. So we are librarians. Everything accordingly in one column.
I sure hope, Max, that my wife is not listening today, because that term grumpy German has been used in this household before. So, but that's funny. But to continue on that line of thinking, right? When you have a salesperson that embraces the technology, right? Whether it's a homegrown CRM, it's ours, it's something else that is providing relevant data for the customer, right? Because it's easy to just go buy technology. And we talk to distributors and manufacturers every day, that are, we have an ERP system, but their ERP system is antiquated, bad data, and no plan to make that better. Or, we have a CRM, but it's a CRM that they bought 10 years ago, and once in a while someone will put some notes in. Our view of things is that the CRM should be 50, 60, 70% of the data in it should be the company putting data out for the salesperson. Because to your point, Max, about meaningful conversations from that book, that's what we want to create, is that environment that says you're now given all of these tools, because customers are busy. The idea of having the regular meetings, in fact, I go back, I started my career, I don't know that you know this, Max, but I started my career selling in 1989, selling in industrial safety equipment. And then went on through being a manufacturer's representative, manufacturing company as well. And so, the days of stopping by with bagels, there are some of those people left that want you to do that, but they're retiring, and their replacement is everything is about digital, right? And so when we can arm a salesperson with the things that goes and helps that customer say, wow, I didn't know what you're sharing with me about my own business. Right? When that salesperson can come in and say, hey, we ran an analysis, and based upon what we're seeing is we think these things are going on. And I've seen that happen with literally spreadsheet data from when I was in the manufacturing business, of talking to distributors where they thought they were buying all of a category from me, but they weren't. And I had to go share with them that it wasn't happening. And now what we look at how we can do that with AI, of understanding what's really happening at the customer, with truly serving the customer better in that case.
Yeah,
I believe that.
and there was an article that came out this week. It might have been Mike Marks. I'm not 100% sure,
Mhm.
where he said there was some surveys that in the distribution world, 22% of the companies said they didn't want to have to deal with an outside sales rep at all.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, and I believe, and we're seeing this, if an outside salesperson is providing value and relevance to that
That's right.
customer, they'll want to see him or
Yeah.
her. Right. And if they're not providing value, now maybe if they're bringing bratwursts and not bagels, it'll work. I don't know. But if they're not providing value, then that's exactly why it's just a quote unquote waste of time along
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things. So there's a lot of capabilities for AI and to be not just helping to drive the sales process and the sales management aspect of it, but how
Right.
does that salesperson who hasn't been around for 50 years or whatever, how do we provide that maximum relevance and the maximum value to the customer, which will then cause the customer to want to have more interaction with
Yeah.
that salesperson? That's kind of a win-win.
Well, I think you're spot on with that, Tom. And I believe what we're quoting there was Mike and Max. Do you know Mike Marks with the?
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah, he's a character, right?
Yeah, the NASCAR guy.
Yeah, he's a car racer. Yep, and character might be a understatement. He was been on the show before. We had quite a good time with him, and but I do believe that was Mike. And I think if I might reach out to Mike and ask him the question: is that 22% said they don't want to see anybody? I wonder if there's a caveat that goes with that. That is, I want to see them when I want to see them, versus I want to see them on the schedule
Sure.
of them being able,
So
go ahead, Max.
So what we did, for example, is we created a software that is calculating the first day when a product runs out in the supply chain,
Mhm.
and the customer only has to buy regularly at Ludwig Meister. So you're an OE customer buying 10,000 bearings a year. I can give you a call 6 months before the problem happens.
Mhm.
I give you a call and said, we will have a problem in 6 months.
Mhm.
And how can we try to solve this today? And what we are doing now is we will create a customer dashboard where the customer sees all the data,
Mhm.
and he can ask for help. And that is why your topic just resonated with me, because I think it is important to be there for the customer whenever he wants to have contact, support, a visit,
Perfect.
maybe just a call, but he has to ask for it.
Yep.
Because and then when you really help and solve problems, then I think this will also be a good topic or a good chance for the future. But you have to be available. But please do not, I don't know, make just get the customers busy. That doesn't work anymore.
No, I think you're spot on. We've talked about this a number of times, and we talk about it with customers as well. Is that the statistics right now are, I think it's 62% of B2B buyers are millennials, right? And so I always make the comment is, they probably ordered dinner last night on their phone. They took their girlfriend on a date by calling an Uber from their phone, but they enjoyed having a waiter at the restaurant serve them,
Mhm.
right? And that is just the same if we cross that over into distribution. When we think about sales, is I may want to fully engage with your chat bot that's AI driven about my orders and things like that in the business, but I also may have an application where, in your case, a belt system or a bearing system, and I want someone on site that can do a walkthrough with me to give me some feedback and ideas. But they want the choice is the
Yep.
key, right? And so that's what I was kind of wondering, Tom, about that statistic from Mike is, and it probably was a generic question, but
Yeah.
if you took that 22%, my guess is if you peeled that onion a little bit further, right? It's not that I don't want to deal with on-site salespeople, is I would like to invite them.
Yeah,
For
I think that's
specific
true. And I
activity.
think his point wasn't to be down to the
Yeah.
letter. I
Yeah.
think his point is bring value, right? That's really his point.
That's perfectly said. Exactly.
Um,
That's very
and
good.
the statistics that are showing that the tolerance for no value is getting less and less and less. That's all
Yeah.
there is really.
Yep.
All right.
Very good. Good. Yeah. So we had the follow-up article, how to create and execute marketing strategies and hit business goals. Let's move on for the case of time. I'll just quote, there are three P's they talked about in that article I thought was interesting: charting the path forward, really understanding what CEOs and C-level executives want. Pick your priorities, make sure that there's outcomes that are coming from what marketing efforts are being done within the business, as opposed to just expecting to have a budget. I was listening, Tom, to a podcast we both listened to, Revenue Vitals, with Chris Walker last week. And, he was talking about marketing should be zero-based budgeting. So every year you have to absolutely earn and get a brand new budget based upon what you achieved the previous year with your marketing dollars. And I really thought about it. And for me, that resonated, that's a really good idea. I mean, a lot of organizations do zero-based budgeting across the company. But when you think about it in marketing, it's like, well, let's look at the activity and the return on investment in that activity, and then do some zero-based budgeting based upon that. So I thought it was pretty good. And then they talked about, pivoting when needed, that things change, and to meet your priorities, you've got to be willing to pivot or adjust and modify. So I thought there's a couple of good points in that.
Yeah, and we're seeing more and more. I'm seeing more and more anyway, and the people we're working with, on the distributor side, an emphasis or at least some attention being put on marketing. But I see a lot of it's early and they're not really sure exactly what to do with it, right? And so we may have touched on this last week, is unfortunately seeing some bad practices being carried over from the tech world, where, hey, how do we go get some leads? We talked about MQLs and all that stuff, I think, on the show last week. But I do think that as we're seeing more and more of what we just talked about, the marketing piece and the sales piece, the line between them becomes more and more blurred all the time.
Yep.
It's just, how do I acquire customers? How do I retain customers? And how do I provide a better experience? That's really the job of the group that are there. So,
well, it's interesting too, how that kind of ties in Max. I'd love your thoughts on this, as well, as we talk oftentimes about having the idea of having a revenue department versus a sales and marketing department, because those lines are blurring so much now, right? Because if you think about some of the things related to this particular article, it's talking about, trying to achieve goals of the organization. And I don't know how it is in your organization or what you see in Germany and outside of Germany, but what we historically see here in the US is marketing says sales sucks because they never close any leads, and sales says marketing sucks because they're bad leads, because they have different priorities, right? Instead of them looking together to say, hey, what is it that our customer needs from us? And then let's work sales and marketing together as a team that have goals that match each other's goals within the organization.
I think the last topic you mentioned is very important. The goals have to be aligned, and it's not only marketing, it's sales, it's e-commerce, and maybe sometimes even purchasing, because you make a marketing campaign for a special product line, you have to have the right products on your shelf. And you have to get the right brochures for the salespeople. So I think everybody has to be aligned. And in our company, for example, marketing and e-commerce is separated from sales. Okay. But today it works very well because we integrated a management system. It's called Objectives and Key Results. And we started this in 2019. Okay. And for example, next week, we will negotiate for two days. What are our priorities for the next 4 months? And then everybody knows what to do. And then marketing, e-commerce, sales, everybody is aligned. Everybody knows what are the priorities and what resources do they have to provide. So I don't think they have to be in one department. For example, at the head of sales, I think it's more important to be aligned.
Yeah, that's good. That sounds very much, your process sounds very much, we use a system at LeadSmart called EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. Yep.
Traction.
Yep, exactly right. In fact, I tell people all the time, I said, if you asked me what my top 3 or 5 business books are, Traction would be in it, because while it seems somewhat simplistic and not revolutionary, it is, some of it's common sense, but common sense that we don't use regularly. You
Yeah,
know?
right person, right seat. So I think
Exactly right.
many very good things in this book, and I don't care how a management system is called.
Yeah.
Practicing key results is very
Yep.
similar to
Yeah.
quarterly rocks, but
Mhm.
they really have to plan your resources and priorities, and stop making yearly plans that they don't.
Well, I think that's and what it does is it keeps everybody rowing the boat in the same direction, right?
Yeah,
Right. And so there's nothing worse than if you've got, you know, marketing working on this and sales working on that, and then, you know, product building, and like in our case, you know, building product features because they just wanted to build product features. Well, let's build product features and market based upon our goals that have been set for a period of time. So good news. Hey, we need to move because of time, because we wanted to talk about a little update here. We're kind of moving on to our technology and cybersecurity segment. This first article talks about the EU's new AI rules. We've talked about that a few times on the show previously. This is an article from Reuters, but this is according to these articles. And Max, I really wanted your feedback on this. This is starting to, you know, come into place now, and we're seeing more about it. Are you hearing a lot of buzz about that in your conversation?
Yes, but frankly speaking, I think it's more important to really use AI than to be 100% perfect. But that's not very German. So
I was going to say, wait a minute, that didn't sound very German.
Yeah,
yeah,
that
so
sounds Italian.
I think transparency is okay.
Mhm.
But we have a big problem in the EU with the GDPR and how we talk about data security and all this stuff. Because I think for the US it's great because everybody supports Amazon, Microsoft, and so on. But I think for smaller companies it always makes a lot of work. So I think regulate as less as possible and just go ahead. Transparency is important. You should report. And I also think that copyright is very important, and this will be a big topic. But I think AI could be the solution for the loss of workforce all over the world. And I think it is so important that the EU should not risk to really use this chance and opportunity. Very important.
Well, it's interesting, Tom. I'll make a quick comment and then come back to you. I think there's a lot of discussion about, you know, in that regulations that they're putting out, right, which is very different, right? We had a presidential order in the U.S. here, which has kind of no teeth behind it because you can't enforce that. But with this becoming a regulatory issue in the EU, it's very different. And I think, you know, part of the discussion that they had early on was, you know, wanting to help foster growth of AI-driven companies within the EU. But the other side of it is if the transparency on how they built their model and all these things that they're asking about has to really be there, I wonder if the small guy can really go compete with the big guys in that setting. It should be interesting to watch. Tom, you had some thoughts?
Well, it's same thoughts, Max. I'm not. I'm in favor of regulation based around the premise or the purpose of it, right, is to kind of provide some protection and some guardrails. What I'm not in favor of, I think we're way too early to be regulating. The things that we're regulating now are going to be irrelevant in 6 months, or there's going to be something else that are going to be, we're in like so early. And so what we end up doing is creating things that just aren't practical, right? The regulations are not practical. People are confused. It slows down innovation. It causes, so that's my concern with regulation is we're way too early. Let's let this play out a little bit. Let's see how the market actually polices itself a bit more. How does there's a lot of things that we can do I mean, we're so early to be able to be putting regulation in place. It's just, to me, it's just impractical. And, Europe, I think with GDPR, as you said, they way overstepped. It's not practical. It's, and it's created a lot of noise, honestly, versus a lot of results of which they were trying to accomplish.
And it's not helping. So
Right. It's not helping.
it's not a success. I don't
Right.
think so. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's
all right.
I'm appreciative of the comparison, Max, with GDPR with that, because it's nothing's really coming from it, right? So that's the key.
The
Good.
GDPR was even a bit more black and white in what it was about. This is not black and white. There's all kinds of shades of gray, which is going to make it even that much more less practical, or much more. Anyway, don't get me started.
Sounds like some more bureaucrats that have new titles and new jobs. So we'll go from that. Good. Well, as we're continuing with the newsletter, and I usually make this comment about 20 minutes ago in the show, but what we're gathered together today on our live broadcast here, if you're with us, we're looking at the newsletter that we send out every week. It's Around the Horn in Wholesale Distribution and Manufacturing. That goes out to about 10,000 people each week. If you're listening on the podcast, you wouldn't be able to see what we're referencing here. But if you would like that newsletter, you can reach out to us at hello@leadsmarttech.com, and we'd be happy to provide you, get you on that list with about 10,000 others to get the newsletter. Or you can go to the website for the podcast, which is www.aroundthehornpod.com, and get access to it that way as well. So as we're going to kind of move a little bit quicker so we can have some conversation as we wind down today. But the following article is about 3 reasons Grainger prioritizes AI. There was the Distribution Strategy Group had their big event week before last or last week, I guess, in Chicago. And one of the Grainger executives responsible for AI there talked about 3 things. He talked about, 1, AI accelerates digital transformation. So they're doing so much across the board with product cross-referencing, pricing, search, publishing within their organization that AI is helping with. And they talked about in this article, a takeaway is that AI is a competitive advantage for learning your customer behavior inside and outside. Ties well with what we were discussing earlier today. Second one was that no one size fits all software. So they're building out their tech stack. They've consolidated 1,000 software applications that they have running within an organization. Talk about a tech stack. It's tech stack. So key takeaways is internal resources and technology. It takes the right people and the right processes to manage AI. And then third is why they're making it a priority. They see 3 pillars, and that's the only thing I wanted to mention today really was process, technology, and people. So I really like that piece. When you're looking at AI in your organization, we have an article coming up about AI and cybersecurity, process, technology, and people. So you can have one and not have the others and not be successful. But I think when you pull those together, it's a powerful mix.
Okay.
Tom, no rebuttal, no retort, no.
Well, I have a number of comments,
I thought you were going to run wild with those 3 pieces of people, processes, and tech.
No, well, I mean, that's common, right? In most projects and tech projects, you
Mhm.
look at the people, process, and the technology that are there. I do think there is some underlying tone here that I think is relevant to be thinking about, though, about the one size fits all. I think the concept of buying off the shelf software and just trying to, if you look at when I started my career, enterprise software was a lot of customization. And then it
Mhm.
moved from, hey, we're moving to the cloud and we're moving to SaaS and we got to scale and all that stuff. And everything's got to look the same for everybody. I think when we now move back into this more AI world, it's going to be a bit more tailored, maybe
Mhm.
not customized, but tailored. And I think that, we spend a lot of time with our customers really looking at how do we tailor our solution to what they're doing. It
Right.
takes more work. It takes more time, but I don't know that you can do it. I don't think you can have a cookie cutter, especially when you start incorporating the data and all the stuff we
Mhm.
talked about earlier. I think that's an important point that we should, as companies, you should be thinking about is, hey, trying to just buy an off the shelf solution and plugging it in blindly into the organization, probably not going to be a good fit as we go forward. So, and it sounds like certainly, Max, you guys have really taken that to the whole next level by all the stuff that you've done with your own internal team.
Yeah, and I really think that the software should be as small as possible. So if I don't need Photoshop because I only have to crop images, then
That's right.
maybe we should use the smallest software that
Mhm.
we can find. And I think tailored is a good way for many companies. For us, we really try to customize or really build the software by ourselves. But that's maybe the result of 10 years of building software.
Right.
So now
Mhm.
we are some kind of geeks.
Right. Right.
Very good.
But as a vendor, I think that we will look at this all the time is obviously we want to have a baseline of products that we can support and scale and go across multiple people, but we have to look at the tailor part of it and how do we do that in a way that can meet both objectives. And I think we've swung, I've been in the software world my whole career. I've seen it swing from one extreme to the other. I think we're now coming back to a little bit more of a middle ground, and that was the point in there. So
Good. Jumping ahead, how to craft a responsible generative AI strategy. We could probably spend an hour on this, but any quick
yeah,
takeaways from that?
I think it's a good summary of a lot of the things we've
Yeah.
been talking about and that we've hit on today. There was nothing in there that was earth shattering. It was really more kind of combining a lot of the things that we've talked about.
Yeah, I included that this week just because of the fact that we've got on a pretty consistent basis, we're talking day in and day out to companies that are ready to go, right? And we're talking with small distributors and very large distributors that are trying to figure out the whole AI thing and how is it going to impact their business and what are the risks and the things that might be problematic with that and so forth. And so having a program in place where we've got back to our people, processes, and technology is part of the process. Is we have a cybersecurity piece of that. We have a Maxim even made the comment earlier about people he may not even know in his organization and what are they sharing outside the organization. I always use the example, I had a big Max, I do a lot of volunteer work in my faith, and I had a security document about it came from the world headquarters of my faith, and it was about how to keep your local congregation safe. And I was wanting to compare it with a previous document that had been sent, and I almost loaded them both into ChatGPT for the comparison. And I was like, that's not something I want to put out there, right? That's an important document. And so having these pieces in place is the key, right? That and people know what to do and not to do within the organization, what gets shared, how we use AI it becomes very important. So good piece that goes with that. Good. All right. So I'm going to just kind of hit really quickly on this. It's just that we're in our sales and M&A segment. We'll go, if you guys don't mind, I'll just kind of hit on this. This is QXO announced $1 billion investment and a new leadership team. This is Brad Jacobs. Brad, I think, was one of the founders of United Rentals, which was one of the biggest equipment rental companies in the U.S. And I think he's been on either started or been involved with or on the board of, I think the article said 7 different companies that were over $1 billion in sales in the mostly building material space. So he just put this kind of, Olympics type team together, put a lot of his own money in, and now what their acquisitions that will be coming out of this will be pretty interesting. I want to watch it closely because it's a big deal, because this is not just a private equity fund that's dipping their beak in the water here and there with some building material companies. And they'll probably go outside of building materials, but this is all about distribution acquisition. So it'll be interesting. So, article here as well. Last thing we'll talk about in that segment is sales management. Don't leave this at the office. Max, I'll ask you for a comment after I make a comment here and see how this might apply into your organization. The idea was don't leave the office without this. And the article was written by a sales coach from Engaged Selling. And the concept was, hey, get your sales manager out there, your director level person, even a CEO out there on a more regular basis, because you might not think you need their help, but you probably do. And on top of that, more importantly, you may not think about it, but it makes the customer feel better when you bring executives to visit them. So any thoughts on that, Max, about how you guys do that at Ludwig Meister?
Actually, I have customers meetings every week.
Okay.
I think it's very important. Usually, I try to make them here in our headquarters because I can demonstrate all our strategy and what we want to do and where we are going and how we can add value. It's much easier to show it here in my premises, in the logistics and something like this. But I also go to the customer, so I always say I'm not afraid of the customer. I think it's important. You have to learn, and you always have to adapt the strategy, because you cannot make a strategy that works in the ivory tower. It doesn't work. So I think it's important to talk to the people that really try to use your value. Yeah,
that's great. Good. Any thoughts on that, Tom, before we jump ahead?
No, let's go ahead.
All right, let's move quickly through our people and leadership segment. Gen Z, the role in shaping the future of the workforce.
Yeah, this was an interesting one about, they were talking about a lot of younger people are foregoing college and going to trade schools and vocational schools or whatever due to the high price of college and even just the overall value, right, that you receive from college. It's funny, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine's son a couple weeks ago. Is he was asking me, if you were to go to college again, where would you go and what would you do? And I said, I probably wouldn't. And I mean, there was a lot of fun in college, but if you just look at it from what I got out of it, I could have easily gotten that out of other sources a lot easier and a lot faster than 4 years of college. So I think this is becoming, that this is becoming more and more of a trend, is how do I get the skills that I need? And I have a friend who's a professor at the university that I'm at here. And I was asking him the other day, are you doing anything with AI and engineering? And they're not there yet, right? So the curriculum gets so far behind in a lot of schools that you're behind the curve anyway. So there's just, anyway, I thought it was an interesting article that, a lot of people are definitely taking different routes.
Yep. I think you look at, we've got one of our lead developers in the organization, and 24 years old, never went to college and could run circles around most developers, right? That may have a master's degree in electrical engineering,
and he learned on YouTube and Udemy or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but it's the same with us. So we have many great young people, and they are very fast, and I think it's a big chance. You really have to find jobs for them where they really can earn trust very fast, and then they do a great job. So some of them, I always call them Swiss Army knives, because they really learn fast. And you were talking about college. So at the moment, I do not know what I should recommend to my kids, what they should do. Because it's difficult. So I feel the pressure for the young people. But I think a big chance. So we need the most creative people, and I think there are a couple of them outside.
Yeah.
Well, even some of the big tech companies here in California, Facebook, Google, all of that, a lot of them have removed their requirement of a college degree in order to apply. And a lot of them almost always you had to have, degrees and all that stuff to even submit an application. A lot of that has gone away.
Yep. It takes me back, Tom. I remember when I went to what, Max, we have here in the U.S. called a community college or 2-year college before transferring to university. And Tom and I went to high school together, and he was not a little bit, but a lot smarter at the time. So he went straight to the university that was tough to get into, and I had to stay in town for 2 years to get my grades up. But when I transferred into the business school at the university I went to. And I remember the dean of the business school, it was the parents' day, and my parents were with me, and he was talking about, welcoming us to the business school. And his comment was really, it ties into this well, because it makes me think about it a lot, is he said, and he was very successful entrepreneur and businessman himself, who was also an educator. And which is part of the reason I picked this university, because almost all the professors also had business careers. And so he said, I would like to encourage all of you to consider just getting up right now and going down the hall, because 2 doors down in the next big auditorium is the English department. And he said, I can't teach you to write and communicate well in the business school. And he said, you need to learn that. And he said, if you're not a great communicator, go down and get an English degree, because I can teach you business and accounting when I hire you in the job. He goes, I don't need you to have, a bachelor's degree or master's degree in business. I can teach you all that on the job. And this was 30 whatever years ago, right? And so I think now, and you laugh at, we sometimes laugh, but there are a whole lot of people that are just learning their skills and their careers on YouTube.
That is right, but I don't know how much time we have. But
we can talk as long as we want.
the reason why I think college is still a great thing is because you can learn from other people and you can connect, and that is, for example, one reason. Because my plan is to go to Harvard in 2 years and make a special course for business owners and presidents and head managers.
Executive course.
I think it's 9 weeks in total for 2 years. And this is because I want to learn from the best, not only from YouTube, but I want to learn from interesting people and talk to them. And I think, yes, you can learn a lot from YouTube, and I do this every day. So
Sure.
how to build a custom GPT, very easy. But building a business that is maybe winning, I think still takes some other disciplines, like you said, communicating, very important.
Well, I think in kind of wrapping all this up, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think one of the other takeaways, and this is something that came from my father in all of this, was especially if you go away to school. I look at my youngest son went to college out of state, went to local college for 2 years and was out of state for 2 years, and the change in what he learned about being a human being a 2.5 or 3 hour plane flight away from home and having to solve issues on his own. And, I went to school, an hour away from home, not even an hour away from home, but I still had to get myself up each day and get moving. And YouTube doesn't teach that, nor does it teach what you were describing, Max, about the interpersonal skills with it. And even if you look at, there's a big push here in the US because, there's not enough welders. There's not enough of skilled trades people out there. And that's a big push that we're seeing in this country now, because plumbers are making $100 or more an hour, right? Because there's not enough of them.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think this is a good thing to watch. I think
just one last comment as we move here. I completely agree with both of your points about is we have to teach, we have to learn how to survive and thrive, right? In the business world. I'm just wondering if there's a more efficient way to do that than 4 years of college and $250,000 of student debt, right? When you finish. But I completely agree with what you're saying, Max, is there are, I learned how to manage my time in college. I really, but do I need to spend 250,000? Is there a more efficient and more practical way to accomplish those things? I think that's what we have to be thinking about.
No, I think that's great. And as you say that, right, I think what we're going to find, and it makes me kind of laugh because I have I guess it's, a cousin in kind of a removed cousin in Germany. And he finished high school and spent the next 8 years, whatever it was, till he got a PhD and went straight into academia. He's never worked in a factory or a plant. I think he actually did for about 6 months. I think he worked for Caterpillar or John Deere for a bit, but he went straight into teaching, right? So the real world experience outside of that, even staying in the educational world that long, it removes you from being a rounded person and having a lot of background of different things in your career. So,
and I think Paul's comment is really good here, right? Paul says exposure, experiences, and curiosity. Those are very important, right? There's no doubt about that. The question is can we get those in different way? Think about 4 years that we spend minimally in school. God, the world changes so fast in 4 years. Is there a more efficient way to accomplish this?
That's right.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting.
What's funny to me about all of this is we're an hour and 14 minutes into this, and Paul drops in at the very end. It's like 4 words that are so valuable to this discussion.
He wants his mic drop moment. That's fine.
He deserves it. Last week he was talking about you and fishing worms.
That's right.
So thanks, Paul, for being with us. Max, I don't know if you've ever met Paul before. He's at a lot of the events that you might, when you're in the US, if you get a chance to. He's the president and CEO of Dakota Supply Group or DSG, which is they're at 57 location. I think they're at now, growing organization. Paul leads that. He's also on the executive board at affiliated distributors, as well as National Association of Electrical Distributors. And I could go on, but we always appreciate his comments. So, hey, cool article as we wind this down in the people segment about Martin Industrial Supply, multi-generation family business, much like Max's. about some of the things they're doing and managing within their company. So the Ruggles family runs that organization. Good guys, Doug and David. And so congratulations to them. Each week we have our industry scuttlebutt segment. The only thing out of that I was going to comment on is our friends at NAW. We were back visiting them a couple of months ago, the National Association of Wholesalers. Their prior CEO, who was kind of the trigger in growing and moving that organization, passed away. So we're condolences and thoughts to all of them. And then Tom, if you kind of scroll down in the newsletter, as we wind that down, each week we talk about we call it a Goodreads. This week we modified it to Goodreads and Listens, and we added there's a company in the Atlanta, based in the Atlanta area, Mingledorf's, and they're a very, very large HVAC and plumbing distributor, and they've started internally their own podcast for their customers and their people and their vendors. So the gals there that are running that, Jenny and team, Caffeine and Coils, they call it. So we put a little link in there, and we will now kind of include some podcasts. The reason I shared that was for other distributors to kind of take a look at, that's how they're using another resource in marketing to touch their customers, but they're not just touching their customers, their employees, and their vendors through their podcast.
Mhm.
So
That's a good idea.
Sounds
yeah,
like
good idea, isn't it?
sounds like Max's strategy.
Yeah, that's that multimodal approach. So the last thing on our newsletter today, before we chat a little bit and wind down, is Modern Distribution Management through their and now part of NAW. There's a link to their top 24 or 2024 top distributor list. Great list of people, the U.S. based companies. Max, is there anybody that do you have resources like MDM or distribution strategy group like that in the EU or Europe or Germany?
No, I don't think so. And sometimes I think Tom should have opened a branch in Germany.
Okay.
Because I also want to be on the top distributors list. That's
Very good.
on my bucket list. So maybe you can tell them that they should make an European edition.
I think, yeah.
What I think what is unique with MDM is the content that they created already years ago, where nobody had a podcast or stuff like this.
Right.
They wrote great issues and very interesting topics, and also the combination with MDM Analytics. And both of this would be great to have it in here in Germany. I think you can learn a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good news to hear. The in Germany or throughout the EU, are there buying groups like we have here?
Yes, we have buying groups, and we also have some kind of unions and stuff like this.
Okay. Like trade association type things?
Yes, but
Okay.
We participate in a European one, but also in a German one. But I don't think you can compare it. You can compare it to stuff like MDM. Here, Mike Hockett is giving us a comment. I think it's a difference. If you have a buying organization, then there are usually many competitors within this buying corporation.
Right.
And then it's difficult to really create content that stands out and educates everybody. That's my my take on it. So that's why I'm MDM subscriber for, I would guess, 10 years. Yeah.
Good. I don't know if you know, Max, if you know Mike Hockett, executive editor at MDM. Mike's a good friend. He's been on the show a few times. So, Mike, where in Europe would you like to head that up? And we'll throw that out to, where would you like to be, Mike? We'll throw that out to Eric Hopland and the guys at NAW and Tom as well. So
my blinders went down, so it was quite dark in my room. So
that's just fine. Good. Well, Mike's going to carry the torch for you to get Modern Distribution Management coming to Germany and the EU. So that'll be good. I was hoping, as we were talking about that, I think Mike was going to be here. Oh, Amsterdam. Okay. Mike is close enough.
Switzerland. I lived in Switzerland for 3 years. It was great. Central to everything.
Yeah.
Common,
Beautiful.
lots of languages. It's great.
Tom, you lived in Switzerland with a per diem.
I did.
Right. So
it was great.
He that wasn't your meals and all that wasn't out of your pocket. But I remember when you were a young businessman there, that was great. So for me, I think it would be somewhere like, not just in particular Garmisch-Partenkirchen, not far from Max, but somewhere like that, the cool, quaint little town in the mountains, but 40 minutes to the Innsbruck airport, 40 minutes to the Munich airport, and off you go. So, all right, let's go.
All right, let's wrap up.
Yeah, let's wind down. Appreciate everybody being here this weekend, or this today. We're going to talk about the weekend. Max, thank you so much for joining us. Just really, really beneficial to us to kind of get your take, not just on the EU, but on your view from Germany of the US market and seeing what you're doing there. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Good. Well,
I'm going to reach out, Max, and share with you some of the AI things we're working on. I'd love your opinion on some of them.
Yeah, it would be
very
fun.
interesting.
It would be fun to get Max and maybe some of his people on a call and kind of some of the stuff. I think you might be interested in some of the tools that Tom and his team are working on. In fact, we have a call in 10 minutes where I get my weekly update on what the development guys have done. So it's fantastic. Max, you're off to go see some football tonight, huh?
Right. I'm looking forward to it.
Will that be at the Allianz Stadium?
Yeah, it's 10 miles from here in that direction.
Perfect. Yeah. Very, very good. I've driven by that a number of times. I've not been there. I will be visiting with you less than a year from now on my visit to Munich. So we'll look forward to spending some time in person. One favor, Max, can I ask you?
Yeah.
Will you come join us again sometime?
If you're interested, I'm happy to join you. And
it's been great. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So, Tom, any big weekend plans?
No, keep moving. Keep packing my house up. So
yeah, Tom's moving shortly, and my son is getting married this weekend. So
you're going to have more fun than I am. I guess I may crash the party.
My role is to keep Mrs. Brown from exploding with all the lists that she has about what's going on this weekend are astounding, but it should be a good time. All the kids are going to be in town, so it'll be good. So, hey, thank you again, both of you. Tom, I sure appreciate it. Today was number 95. We're 5 away from our 100th episode. There's going to be a party for that one. It's coming together. We've got John working on that, our editor and producer. So more info on that to come shortly. So as we close out, I'm Kevin Brown. We have Max Meister from Ludwig Meister in Dachau, Germany, and my good friend and lifelong friend and business partner, Tom Burton. We'll say thanks to everybody. Be kind, be safe, and do good things.
Have a good weekend.
Stay safe. All the best.